Excellent. Hello, I'm Rifa. How exciting. It's She Says Brighton online. It's the same experience, I'm sure, isn't it? No, is it? Is it? Let's see. I think, let me just change my view so I can see you all. How beautiful to see you. I'm really happy. Tonight is a very exciting night. We're still celebrating 10 years of She Says Brighton. 150 people have signed up tonight. So I'm hoping they'll all be able to get in to the call. We're delighted to be part of Brighton Digital Festival for the 9th year running. And the point of She Says is to bring women in digital, or anyone who identifies as a woman, anyone in tech, digital and creative industries, to support and inspire each other and to help us stay in the industry, which is super important. And tonight you're going to hear from 4 inspiring speakers, all of whom have had their challenges, but also brilliant successes. And so thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and just relax and take it easy and enjoy the ride. And after the last speaker, we'll do a bit of a Q&A, but you're more than welcome to come and go as you like. Obviously, it's a free event. It's a free call. Yeah, as I was saying a little bit earlier, it's quite difficult sometimes to recreate the atmosphere of live She Says Brighton events. But I hope that you're all going to sort of give your love in various ways to our lovely speakers. So I'm just going to crack on with our very first speaker. She's an awesome designer, business coach. She helps run WorthingDigital and is a fellow of the RSA. We've crossed paths a few times over the years, and I'm very excited for you all to meet the wonderful Meg Fenn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rifa, for that intro. It's great to be here. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for inviting me, and for everybody for coming. So I'm going to share my screen now. And sometimes it means I can't see people, but I'm gonna give it a go. Okay, can you all see that? I'm going to play.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. Thank you. So my name is Meg Fenn, and I am a creative designer and marketer. And I'm currently self-employed. I've been running my own business in one form or another since about 2003. So I've split my talk into 3 sections: how I got here, why I'm here, and what I've learned. And in the 3rd section, the what I've learned section, I've added in a couple of top tips that will hopefully be useful to you all going forward. So how I got here. So I recently shared my story on LinkedIn to support the This Little Girl Is Me campaign. And this campaign gives women and girls positive role models from diverse backgrounds. And actually, it's a really great campaign. So do a search of it. Just search the hashtag This Little Girl Is Me. And actually, some of you may have also contributed to this as well. If you want to see my story, it's on my LinkedIn profile, which is Meg Fenn. So I don't have time to give you my full story, but I'll highlight a few points that I think are relevant, hopefully interesting for tonight. So I was born in Korea, and I immediately became an orphan. My birth mother abandoned me right after she had me. So I was put up for adoption, and I grew up in Middle America with an American dad, a Canadian mother, and blonde-haired, blue-eyed brothers and sisters. So this is my Korean dress that I'm showing you now on the screen. It was given to me by my mother when I was a child. I think it was her way of, helping me or showing me or teaching me some of my ethnic heritage. But actually, this caused a lot of tension for me as a child. And it really sort of negatively affected my self-esteem and my confidence. Because at that time, I didn't want to be, shown as being different. I didn't want people to think I was different. I just wanted to be the same as everybody else. But of course I was different. And despite the good intentions of my mother, which of course now I fully can appreciate, it sort of, messed me up, in terms of my identity and my sense of belonging. So fast forward many, many, many years, and I'm now living in Worthing, West Sussex, UK. And I kind of ended up here by chance, but it was also because of the risks that I chose to make along the way. And a lot of those risks were kind of driven by my need to, kind of find my place in the world and to connect with people and to connect with places. And I really wanted to bolster, do things that bolstered and built up my self-esteem and my confidence. So the choices that I made took me to Italy to study art, to the Czech Republic to teach at the university there, to Japan to teach at an English academy, and to the UK to embark on my master's in design studies. And then I ended up marrying my British boyfriend and stayed here. So I'm raising mixed heritage kids, and I'm helping them with their own challenges with identity and ethnicity. So these are my children. And actually they're older now, but they do not allow me to take pictures of them. But to explain, do you eat dog? This was actually a racist comment that was made to my daughter when she was in high school. And it just kind of represents one example of lots and lots of experiences of this kind that I've had and that my children have had. And perhaps some of you here as well, can relate to this as well. So when my oldest was a toddler and I was pregnant with my daughter, I started up my very first business on the same day that I was made redundant from my web design job. And at that time, I kind of thought it would be a temporary thing and that I would go back into employment eventually. But actually, my freelance career really took off and I never looked back. So why am I here? I champion creativity. And I help people to be creative and stay creative in order to problem solve and innovate. My background is in web and graphic design. And over the years, I have upskilled in marketing and SEO. SEO is search engine optimization. So really, it makes a lot of sense because all of those things are about communication. Whether it's creating a brand or sharing that brand story on a website or through marketing, or being visible online. And all of those things, have creativity at the heart of all of it. So I work as a contract designer, which means I only work with a few organizations, helping them with their design and marketing, but also helping their clients with their design and marketing as well. So the type of projects include, for example, strategy, marketing, design, workshop facilitation as well. So this is a small sample of clients that I've worked on projects for, and I really feel proud that I'm contributing, even if it's in a really small way, to the work that they are doing. I also get to work on a project called Breakthrough, which is a fully funded business support program specifically for female-led and ethnic minority-led businesses in East Sussex. So I do the design and marketing for it, but more importantly for me, I am one of the mentors on this program, and I absolutely love that. I love meeting and helping business owners. This program is currently open, so if you're interested in it, then get in touch with me afterwards. So another way that I champion creativity is by running a creative challenge series on an online community platform called the Possibility Club. It's free and it's open to everyone, so please check it out. What have I learned? I've learned a lot, but I've chosen 3 key main takeaways to share with you tonight. Give back, hone your USP, your unique selling point, and prioritize people. So give back. Depending on where you are in your career or in your business, the level of giving back for you might be different. For me, I've been around for a long time. So giving back is really important for me. And I do that by volunteering, by supporting crowdfunding campaigns, by being a critical friend, and also, Rifa mentioned this earlier, by helping to run WorthingDigital, which is a community group. So I think I'm starting to run out of time, so I won't go into detail about WorthingDigital, but please do check it out afterwards or get in touch with me if you want to know more about that. So giving back really does open up all kinds of opportunities, and it helps you to connect with people and to build those really important relationships. So my second takeaway is to hone your USP, your unique selling point. When I started out, my USP was that I could do both the graphic design and the web design for projects. And clients really liked that because it meant they could just hire me or just one person rather than trying to hire two different people. And so it really helped me to fast track my freelance career. And then when I started up my first limited company, my USP became even more important because I was working at a higher level and with lots more competition. So your USP doesn't necessarily have to be based on skills. It could be based on something else. But if it is based on your skills, then this is really hugely valuable for you when you're building your business. So the third takeaway is prioritize people. All throughout my professional career, I have really tried to put people above profit. I 100% believe that if you prioritize people, and when I say people, I mean clients, business associates, employees, people that you connect with, then you can be successful. So I felt so strongly about this that it actually meant that I needed to leave my second limited company, which was a partnership, because I wasn't able to prioritize clients within that partnership. And once I recognized that, I knew that I needed to stay true to my own values and work in a way that meant that I was putting people above profit. And when I walked away from my company, something really interesting happened. Clients wanted to continue to work with me. They said they didn't care that I wasn't a company anymore. They just wanted to carry on working with me. And I think it's because, I just prioritized them and I built such a strong relationship with them. And also partially because of my USP as well. So in doing this, I was also able to reboot happiness for myself when it came to establishing a better work-life balance. And that for me has actually been a game changer for me and my life. So thank you so much for listening to me. Please connect with me. I'm not on Facebook, but I am on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all the other speakers' talks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. That was amazing. Excellent top tips, especially honing your personal USP, which is something I think a lot of us sometimes struggle with, like actually blowing your own trumpet, because nobody else is going to. So you've got to be the first one. We'll come back to you at the end, and hopefully people have some questions for you. And yeah, loads of nice love in the chat, which is great. And I'm sorry that we can't. We could all unmute and give you a round of applause, but it's not quite the same. So thank you so much, Meg. We'll come back to you. Wonderful, lovely picture of your kids as well. So wow, look at us on time and everything. Our second speaker is a very talented designer and brand strategist, which I can never say, strategist. A proud member of Brighton's LGBTQ+ community, and she's here tonight to share her experiences of burnout, as well as show some of her awesome work as well. Please welcome Kirsty Denro.
Hi everyone, thanks Rifa. It's a complete pleasure to be here with you all tonight. Yeah, and it was great to hear a bit of Meg's story. Meg was actually one of the first people I met when I moved to kind of the Brighton area, and she's always been really kind and supportive. So yeah, great to see you, Meg. So I'm just going to try and share my screen because I've got some slides to share with you. Hopefully that's working.
All good.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I'm Kirsty Denro. I run a design collective called Studio Kiko, and I really wanted to talk to you about how that came about and a little bit about my career before Studio Kiko and what kind of led me to create it. Okay, to the next one. So Studio Kiko is a socially conscious design collective, and we use creativity to make a positive impact on people and planet. And the way that we do that is we support businesses who prioritise purpose alongside profit, to turn their big visions into brands that have a positive impact, and we create their brand identities for them. So that's where I'm at now. I absolutely love doing it. But Kiko was kind of born just after quite a difficult period in my career, when I'd experienced quite a bad episode of burnout after working at a London agency for nearly 10 years. So that's what I wanted to focus on tonight, mainly kind of talking to you about my journey through that. So just in case anyone's not familiar with burnout, I know it's kind of talked about quite a lot these days, not so much when it happened to me actually, it was kind of a new thing for me to hear about. But just to give you a couple of definitions, so the World Health Organization define it as a syndrome that's conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that's not been successfully managed. And in the dictionary, it's called a total loss of energy and interest and an inability to function effectively, experienced as a result of excessive demands on one's resources or chronic overwork. So here's quite a technical diagram of my career to date. You can see that I'm a designer and not a scientist, but with the help of emojis, it's just kind of a quick, brief look at my kind of career to date. So there's me as a fresh-faced emoji graduate in 2003, and I'm a graphic designer, so I kind of worked my way up from junior designer and then went to midweight designer, senior designer, and then to studio manager, where I started to have kind of a bit of a team to manage, and the creative side of things kind of was less of a focus. There was more admin, more strategy, and then moving up to, I guess, what would be seen as like the peak of my career, which was being a design director, at which stage I had quite a big team. I was kind of flying around the world, going to all different meetings, had a lot more admin, a lot more stress. And it's kind of the classic tale of working your way up to get to somewhere that you think you want to be, and then getting there and realizing that I actually wasn't very happy. I was really exhausted and I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. And it was at that point in my career that I just had a complete burnout. So things that I was focusing on at the time were striving for recognition and trying to prove myself. I was always kind of working towards the next pay rise and the next promotion, always trying to build my team into a larger team. I was really conscious of making my family proud and looking successful, whatever that may be. And I was a real perfectionist, so it was really hard on myself and was always trying to deliver kind of really high quality work. And it was interesting looking back on it, because the things that I really neglected during that climb up the ladder were my happiness and my fulfillment and my well-being. And again, another technical chart to show that. But yeah, kind of that my happiness and fulfillment was very high at the start of my career. I was just so excited to be out there designing. And as I kind of focused more on the progression and became a bit more of a perfectionist, the kind of I really neglected like my physical well-being was quite low on the list, and my need for a varied and full life. I kind of made work a really big focus in my life, and my mental health kind of sort of dropped down the priority list as well as my source of creativity, which I didn't kind of nurture. And I didn't really check in to see if my values were still aligned with the work that I was doing, which had a real kind of impact on my fulfillment as time went on. And I really wasn't making any time to rest as well. So you can kind of see the contrast of the climbing up the ladder and then the happiness and fulfillment kind of leading me to the burnout. And burnout kind of looks different for everybody, like any illness, like the symptoms can be really different. But I just wanted to talk you through how it looked for me. So as things started to get worse, it was things like missing events all the time with family and friends. I had to send a lot of text messages, cancelling things. I would always get ill. I'd always be the person at work with a cold or the flu. And it would last for a long time. And then I started to kind of have the odd day off where I just couldn't face work, which was quite unusual for me. And I had unexplained stomach pains and was finding that I was kind of using alcohol and nicotine to kind of manage my anxiety more and more. And as that moved on, it kind of worsened and I developed eczema on my hands, which I've never had before. I suffered with like a severe lack of motivation. So I'd be at work and I'd just feel really overwhelmed at small tasks that usually I would be able to do. And I would just get stuck in procrastination. And I wasn't sleeping well. I kind of felt disconnected from loved ones. And there was quite a lot of shame around that time because it was quite scary going from feeling like I was quite a high achiever to suddenly just not being able to do things anymore. So I kind of felt like I needed to hide it away a little bit. And that kind of led to the stage where actually I just could no longer function at work, and I had to kind of go to HR and go to the boss of the company and say that I needed some time out. And I was kind of completely exhausted by this stage. And it kind of led to, after 9.5 years in a job, walking out the door one day, and it worked out that I never went back again. So yeah, that was quite a difficult time for me. And I moved out of London, moved back home. So I was kind of 38, living with my mum and dad, no career anymore. And it felt like a real low point. And my confidence was kind of down on the floor. But then I kind of started to recover from it. And that kind of went in two phases. So the first phase was what I've called here the blame game. So that was really just like blaming it all on the place where I was working and saying they worked me too hard, like they've broken me. I had to work so hard for each of my promotions. And then after kind of a period of rest, I started to reflect a little bit more on what actually happened. And that involved a bit of self-reflection as well. So I kind of thought, well, what was I bringing to the party? So when I looked at it, yeah, the environment was pretty toxic. So that was not helpful. I had a very difficult boss. There was kind of the classic agency culture of really high pressure, fast turnarounds, lots of projects to do. But when I looked at what I was bringing to the table, I was also kind of bringing my perfectionism, bringing my people pleasing. I had no boundaries whatsoever around work. I would just stay as late as I needed to stay to get it done. I'd go in at bank holidays, weekends, and I prioritize it over everything else. And I think I was also bringing like my family work values to the table, which are like work is good and rest equals lazy. So yeah, a whole mixture. And it was only when I started to like look at my part in the burnout that I could see like how I could change things and how I could move forward. So I started to think, so if I'm part of the problem, how do I stop this happening again? And this is something that I've looked at with my friend, Karen Robinson recently, who runs The Flockist. She's an amazing leadership and management coach. So I highly recommend looking her up. I'll drop her details in the chat later. But we looked at burnout and the burnout cycle. So basically, if you burn out or someone who's burning out, there's a good chance that they've burned out before or that they're going to burn out again, because it actually tends to happen in a cycle, and it's mainly due to a toxic relationship with your work. So I'll just quickly whiz through these different phases. So phase one is called the honeymoon period, and that's when you're like completely smashing it, you're multitasking, you're smashing it at work, you're still going for work drinks, you're still keeping track of all your events and what your friends are up to, and you feel like you're on fire, which is great. But unfortunately, unless you've got some really good self-care things in place, it's never really sustainable in that first phase, which kind of then leads you on to phase 2, which is the onset of stress. And at this stage, your optimism starts to kind of die down a little bit, and you might start to notice physical and mental and emotional stress symptoms coming in, like anxiety and headaches. And again, if that's kind of not treated, or you don't make any adaptations, then you kind of move through to phase 3, which is chronic stress. And that's when you start to feel stress a lot of the time, and you kind of get this anxious feeling of being out of control. And that then moves through to phase 4, which is burnout. And at that stage, it's kind of like you can't carry on as normal, and the stress has kind of just overcome you. And then the scary thing is that after kind of working through the burnout, phase 5 is that the cycle begins all over again. So Karen's kind of got this quote that is, burnout is the habituation of a continuous cycle of fine to falling off the edge, only to run back up the hill and start again with manic "I've got this" bells on, which is something I can definitely relate to. And when I look back through my career, I could see that, yeah, I'd had this big cycle of burnout, but actually my whole career, and even going back to uni, I could see these kind of smaller cycles that had run through everything. And I could see it coming with me into my future if I didn't make some changes. But the good news is there are ways to break out of the cycle. And the main one really is to kind of do a bit of a recce around your relationship with your work. So just taking some time out to consider your relationship and if it's healthy, whether you've got balance and a sustainable pace, and are there any adjustments you can make to prioritise your health and your well-being and enjoy your work. And some ways of doing this are listening to your body. So the body is so clever at giving you little warning signs if something's not quite right. So it's great to get to know what your particular warning signs are and to look out for them. Build boundaries around work, so have like 3 to 5 simple rules in place which keep you healthy. They might be things like moving your body for 20 minutes a day, or going to bed at 11 o'clock, or maybe having a night where you just switch everything off. And having at least 2 trusted buddies, so this could be like your partner or your work BFF. It just needs to be someone who knows you really well, who can look out for those warning signs as well, because often it's someone else that can see them before you can. And then taking the time to know what makes you thrive. So just taking time out to understand what will keep you thriving. And again, that's completely unique to everybody. And just looking for ways that you can build it into your life and build it into your routines. And then I just kind of looked at those and then looked at how I'm bringing that into my life at the moment. So with listening to my body, for me, the early signs that I'm overdoing it a bit are that I suddenly can't sleep, like I have trouble sleeping. I start to procrastinate more, and I often get stomach aches. So now if these start to happen, I know that it's a sign for me to take a break and to slow down a bit. And my boundaries that I've put in place are no working at weekends, no working in the evenings, not taking on work that I'm not passionate about. And always reminding myself that wife, family and friends trump work, which I'm ashamed to say that I do have to remind myself sometimes. And then my buddies are my wife. She knows me better than anybody else, and she's always the first person to spot if I'm overdoing it a little bit. And she'll kind of tell me, and I'll know that I need to kind of slow down a bit. I've also got amazing friends, and my dog Kenny at 5:30 starts scratching at my leg to let me know that we need to go and have a walk now and it's time to finish work. And when I've looked at what helps me thrive, it's a life full of friends, family, creativity, fun, and having freedom in my week is really important to me, as well as eating well, working on projects that I love, and trying to build yoga and meditation into my routine, because that really helps me stay calm and focused. And I by no means got this nailed, so it's kind of an ongoing process. But when I don't do these things, I can definitely feel myself becoming less vibrant, less productive, and definitely less creative. So I just have to kind of continually check in with myself, and if I feel like I'm veering off track a bit, just sort of gently guide myself back. And having looked at the reflection side of things and how it's important what I'm doing, but it's also important the environment I'm in. So I've really looked at what I'm creating with my business, Kiko. So I'm growing a business that I'm proud of that has a positive impact on people and planet, which is really important for my personal fulfillment. I'm really always looking to use business as a force for good, and to really respect creativity within my business. So for me and for the designers that I work with, I create a space for creativity to really flourish. We're environmentally conscious. I love being part of conversations about mental well-being and just talking about burnout and other aspects of mental well-being at work. Yeah, and I'm creating and growing an awesome collective. So it's so important the people that you work with. And since starting Kiko, I've met amazing people, and I love growing my network and developing brilliant relationships with clients as well. And I've set a sustainable pace of work for myself, and again for everyone within the collective. That's no one's expected to work late or do anything the weekend. I kind of have that running through Kiko. And giving back and contributing to others, again, is really important for me for fulfillment. So my 5 top tips as a little takeaway are: number 1, listen to your body. So like I said before, it really is the best kind of radar for warning signs. Number 2, acknowledge your progress and celebrate your wins. I think it can be really easy to just kind of compare yourself to other people and look at what you haven't done that you wanted to achieve. But if you take the time to stop and look at how far you've come, and celebrate your wins, large and small, that's really helpful. So 3, don't make work the most important thing in your life, which I definitely used to do. So I've just put there, maybe it's the most important thing in your day sometimes, but generally there's just so much more to life. And 4, aim to thrive, not just get by. And I have to remind myself of this sometimes, like just not burning out is not enough. Like, I want to be thriving. So try to set up your life so that you can be the happiest, most fulfilled version of you, whatever that may be for you. And then 5, decide what success looks like for you. So what does a brilliant, happy life look like for you? And just decide it and work towards that instead of some outdated version of what society thinks success looks like. And I just wanted to leave you with a quote that I found as I was working on this, which is: when I stopped trying to do it all, I was able to give the best parts of myself to the things that mattered most. Yeah, and that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening. I've put all my details there. If anyone wants to connect, I'd love that. I've also put Karen Height's details there from the Flockiest. She's absolutely amazing. Yeah, thank you. Oh, stop sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kirsty. That was so honest and so beautiful as well. I love your charts, emoji charts. That's the new thing now. You've seen it first at SheSays Brighton. Yeah, fantastic. No, it's really good to like plot that and see, you know, your progression, but also knowing that it can easily spiral out of control where you're really enthusiastic. Thank you so much. I know a lot of us can relate, and yeah, loads of people are giving you love in the chat as well, so feel free to respond to those people. And yeah, thank you so much for all good reminders at all stages of our career. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker, Crumbs. She's a Brighton legend. She is, it's true, she's a Brighton legend, and she's the woman who was key to getting Brighton's coolest music festival off the ground, The Great Escape. She's the brains behind so many fantastic arts digital events such as White Night, and she's currently working with the Dome, the Brighton Dome, on the 5G festival. She's going to tell us much more about her glittering career. Please welcome Donna Close.
Thanks so much, Rifa. And I've got to say, I'm sort of slightly knocked out by Kirsty's talk, which I can't tell you how much that resonated with me. I think it's it's a bit of serendipity that I'm on after you, Kirsty. Thank you so much for that. I really feel like I've learned a lot from it. Yeah, so thank you so much. So yes, thank you for having the slides now. Thank you for having me, Rifa, and thank you for like 10 years of bringing women together to be inspired by that. And honestly, I feel very overwhelmed by Kirsty's talk. I really identified with it. As Rifa says, I've got so many hats on, and I know we all have. In a way, I was sort of thinking when Kirsty was talking, and I was just thinking, in a way, I think part of that has been strategic for me. Actually, it's been like a strategy to cope with burnout, because I absolutely recognise that rhythm of throwing yourself into something, feeling like I'm going to give everything to this and I'm just not going to stop, and then having a burnout. And I think when I reflect on my career now, my work now, I wear a number of hats, and I think part of that might be about not putting all my eggs in one basket, and actually having a whole set of different things going on, all of which I feel passionate about, and which are resonant with my values, but at least I'm sort of spreading the risk, I guess, over them. I don't know if that's the healthiest way of proceeding, but it certainly seems to be what I'm doing now. So the image you can see there is the from the 5G festival. So that's one of my projects. I'm digital culture associate at Brighton Dome Brighton Festival at the moment, leading on the 5G festival, which is about exploring the future of remote artist collaborations, immersive experiences for remote audiences, and hybrid events. So those events where you can still sort of come together into one space, but also technology enables you to have different types of experiences, which might also include actually to have a collective experience of something that's not actually happening live in front of you as well. So it's a really interesting project that incorporates, I guess, two of my big passions, which is around festivals and around digital technology. Alongside that, I'm also a director of a small consultancy called FEI, which stands for Festivals and Events International. So we work all over the world on cultural strategy, developing feasibility studies and business cases for new types of festival and events. And I'm also associate director at Threshold Studios. The main project that I'm leading on for them is called Digital Democracies. So again, that was a project which was about trying to bring together, my history has been, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute, it has been really focused on outdoor art and public space and performances in public spaces, and my interest over the last 15 years has been around digital technologies as well. So Digital Democracies brings those two things together. So how can we support artists to create new types of experience in public space that makes use of digital technologies and the possibilities of that? Up until recently, I was a senior research fellow at the University of Brighton, again, working very much with artists to support them to create new types of cultural experience and new types of artistic products. And before that, I spent 10 years at Brighton and Hove City Council. So I was working on cultural development and special projects. And Rifa mentioned the White Night Festival. Actually, we just passed the 10-year anniversary of the last one, actually, because the idea of the White Night Festival was that it took place on the last Saturday in October, which was when the clocks go back, and it was this idea about creating a modern ritual, something that felt like it could almost be ancient, but also was a real sort of conscious decision to sort of I guess convey and distill the spirit of Brighton now, and it did that by working with the most interesting and exciting sort of contemporary artists that were working in Brighton. I noticed that Rachel Henson's here. She was one of many collaborators that made that into such a brilliant festival. It was a sort of conscious attempt to try and really distill the DNA of the city into one incredible night. And doing that under the cover of darkness, so to speak. So doing it through the night meant that people could be a bit more free, to be a bit more experimental. Before working at the council, I was a project producer at Zap Productions. So the people who ran the Zap Club back in the time when it was much more of a sort of live art space as well as a nightclub. And my job particularly was around producing outdoor arts festivals all over the UK. Streets of Brighton was the largest one of the festivals I produced, and that was always underpinned by commissioning new work, by showing a really inspirational international programme, by running education projects, and by having a programme of industry engagement and debates. In between all of that, I was one of the founding trustees of Brighton Open Air Theatre. That was my good friend Adrian Bunting's, like literally his dying wish was to see an outdoor amphitheatre that would have a like an inclusive approach to its programming. So myself and some other friends of Adrian, 3 other friends of Adrian, established that Brighton Open Air Theatre. And I also met my own work as well. So I work with the Nick Driftwood, we create immersive experiences, again, usually for public space. I mean, it's been really interesting to me, this whole thing, because I don't usually reflect on, I'm sorry that I just feel like I gave you my potted CV, but I don't usually reflect really on my career, because it doesn't really feel like a career, because I really feel like I've just sort of followed my nose to a certain extent. But I was thinking that actually one of the very first projects that I was involved with Claire Raftery, who's the artistic director of Periplum Theatre, way back in the mid-90s, was we established something called the Seaside Sensory Experience. Rachel will remember this, which was low-tech VR. So that was like back in like 93 or something. So here we are, you know, I started off with low-tech VR and now I'm running a 5G festival. So what goes around comes around, I guess. But I came to Brighton in 1990, ostensibly to study intellectual history at the University of Sussex, but really as an opportunity to throw myself completely into what Brighton had to offer. It was the first time I didn't really feel like an outsider, or I guess more accurately, it was the first time that I found myself with a whole bunch of other outsiders, and we're being different, we're being a bit strange was a positive rather than a negative, and I really loved that about the city. And most of my work is over the last 30 years has been either in Brighton or an attempt to take that sort of spirit of Brighton to other places. So as I said, it was a really good opportunity to look back and reflect and sort of like try and like understand and distill some of the values, or some of the things that might link both what I do now and the things that I've done over those last 30 years. And I think what's interesting is what I'm going to try and do now, my approach to this talk was just to try and sort of share with you some of those sort of like things that I found. I mean, I think my projects always seem to be very much of the time and place. And I guess that's one of the things that I always find very interesting is, despite my training, I guess, as a historian, actually, I'm always much more interested in about what happens now and what happens next, because for me, that's where like the change can happen, I guess, and we can sort of like control the change and make the change happen. It's you know, as Joe Strummer said, the future is unwritten, and that's always like really resonated with me. But I think in order to do that, you need to understand your present, and I think that's what cultural producers and creative producers, and that's what we sort of do, is we try and like understand the slivers of truths that are out there in the ether, and then we try and bring those together and try and create something tangible. When I was teaching at the University of Brighton, I used to describe a producer as part witch and part weaver. And that's how I've always like described myself, really, and other people like me. So you're just trying to understand, okay, where's the ideas, where's the opportunity, where's the meaning, where are the resources, and how can I make that into something that we can understand and is tangible or experiential, something that can be analysed and, you know, critiqued and experienced and enjoyed. So I've taken that approach to my own history, I guess, to try and understand what those sort of slithers are. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Natalie.
Has that worked? Can you see the next slide?
I can't yet. No, it's still on the 5G festival. So, oh, it's disappeared now. Shall I just go anywhere? I'm just conscious. Okay, so go to where the people are. That image there is from Group F back in 2003 to Streets of Brighton. So like my passion for outdoor arts is always about how they occupy the public spaces where people share, and where, because of that, you get a really diverse group of people who are going about their lives. They're working, playing, hustling, shopping, on their way somewhere or on their way back somewhere. So disrupting the rhythm of these can provide moments of surprise and opportunities for both reflection and celebration. So and they can help us see the places we live and work in a new way, and also connect us to the other people that are also using those spaces. And I think there's a real energy in that. At ZAP, our unofficial motto was "Sous le pavé la plage." So that idea about, like, you know, what opportunities for our natural self, for play, lies beneath our constructed selves, and the things that we tell us we need to be getting on with. You know, what happens when that gets broken down a little bit by something unexpected to happen in front of you. And I'm really interested actually in about how technology creates those new sort of public spaces. So you know, how can we take those ideas, how can we disrupt in a positive way those digitally mediated spaces? And for me, that's around, you know, the phones that we carry around with us, a supercomputer in our pocket. And so I'm trying to work with artists who are working with that, whether that's through AR or geolocation, but in a deliberate way that just disrupts the rhythm of people's lives and makes them sort of reflect a little bit. So it's worth checking out the Digital Democracies website. You'll see some of the commissions that we've done, and also to do a shout out to Lemonade, which was a project that was shown at Brighton Festival last year, which was a geolocated musical trail around the city. And I think that's just a very, you know, just very interesting to use our phone for sort of collective cultural experiences. Can we go on to the next slide, please? These are images of Upswing from the XR Circus project in 2018. And it's around that you can only be what you can see. So I think if we're going to do projects, we need to be really conscious about the visibility of it. It's not about doing it in a sort of small way or a hidden way. Sometimes it's about being sort of loud and out there, because by doing that, you can democratize the production of culture in a certain way. And when I think about my own history, I grew up in a very working class family. We didn't go to theatres, galleries or concerts. I was the first person in my entire extended family that ever went to university. And I discovered performance through going to free parties and festivals when in my teenage years as well. And it was that really inspired me and opened my eyes to what art could be. There was a particular moment in 1994, I saw the performance of Oceano Satanos from company Joe Batum, which was put on by ZAP as part of the Streets of Brighton. And I really think of that moment sometimes as similar to the Sex Pistols gig at the Leicester Free Trade Hall in Manchester in 1976, because it really felt like everyone just immediately went out and set up a street arts company, myself included. And those galvanizing moments, you know, those moments that happen in the street that make you feel like, oh my God, I can do this too. I've really tried to you know, pay back that legacy by trying to, you know, put on events that do that same thing, that are big and visible and feel both inspirational and also punk rock enough that you feel that you could do it yourself. You know that whole buy a guitar, learn 3 chords and form a band. You know, there's a real power in that, and I think that's how we get to a more diverse sort of set of cultural experiences that we can all enjoy. If we go on to the next one. Invest in the future. I think it's not just enough to inspire people, but it's also about putting the support structures around them as well. So what I've tried to do in all the projects I'm involved with is to make sure that there are real opportunities for commissioning artists, for commissioning new ideas, and supporting that, and not seeing that as a passive, we're just going to give you the money and then let you get on with it, but really about sort of like trying to understand, okay, how do we provide other support in terms, or even just advice in terms of you developing your new ideas. White Night was a real culmination of that. As I said at the beginning, it was all new work, all new experiences, and it grew from 16 experiences in its first year to 76 in 4 years later, which I think just shows you the sort of demand of that type of sort of support that's out there. You know, it's just really important to be able to create avenues for new talent and also new ideas to express themselves. We did something with Digital Democracies, the project I mentioned earlier. We were due to launch in April 2020, just at the beginning of the pandemic. We had to pivot everything online, and we still managed to achieve everything we set out to achieve in terms of creating a sort of supportive, artistic, you know, supportive commissioning network for artists as well. So it shows that you know sometimes you have to adapt, but you know, it's always important to make sure that that's right at the heart of what you do. If we move on to the next slide. That's some images from White Night. That's Dive-In Movies on the left, and Shared Space and Lights First project on the right at Queen's Park in the Pepper Pot. So the idea about innovate without boundaries is about not letting yourself, be tied in by sort of current boundaries. I think some of the boxes that exist within the discourse around arts and culture, visual arts, performing arts, literature, high art, popular art, I think they're feeling very, very outdated. I think they're becoming less meaningful. In the 90s, that's what was really attracted me to outdoor arts. It was new, and therefore it was like inherently democratic. And democratic not just in terms of the different sorts of creative practices, but also between the creative and the technical. And I think digital really provides like another opportunity to do that, because it's new. Like, let's not let ourselves feel restricted by those very narrow definitions about what quality is, but let's open our minds and start having a debate about what we enjoy, and try and create a new sort of critical framework for understanding these new experiences. I think Brighton Digital Festival is fantastic for really championing that, like with this concept of the messy edge, and I think that's something for us all to remember. If you move on to the next slide. So the other thing I wanted to flag, which feels very sort of current at the moment as well, when I sort of reflect back on my career and the things I've learned, is this idea about hell is other people. So this idea that, when I think about the outdoor arts, when I was working in that in the mid-90s, it really requires a whole set of sort of cross-sector partnerships. So you're basically trying to get the police, traffic safety officers, licensing, first aid people to really believe that what you're, the artistic project you're trying to do is valid. And that can be really challenging, because you're having a real clash of different cultures. And over time, you can change that, and you can understand, you can do that through two methods, I think. One, which is about to understand what they care about and try and respond to that, rather than just be talking about why it's important to you. You have to understand why it's important to them. And then the second is to have really sort of robust processes underneath it, which enable you to get away with things that are new things and experimental things. And that really applies to the digital world. For the 5G festival, I'm working with a whole set of different partners that come from completely different cultures and have completely different values, and that's very sort of stressful and challenging, but also it's an opportunity for us to recognise and respect how each other are seen by each other, and try and find common ground and start to build trust, and recognise that that's a long-term process. And then just finally, if we can move to the last slide, which is like hopes for the future. Rifa asked us to think about the hopes for the future, and I think even though it's very difficult to feel positive at the moment with everything going on, COVID, Brexit, climate change, just the growing inequalities, everything else, it feels quite daunting. But without diminishing that in any way, I think that we have to remember there's always been bad things, and there's always been bad times. I remember vividly when I moved to Brighton in 1990, 15 years of Margaret Thatcher, the Gulf War, a huge recession, massive housing crisis, no opportunities. It felt very desperate. But then Brighton was also like an oasis in the playground. It was full of real DIY culture, very supportive environment, where amazing things were happening. We were doing it together. And I think, I hope that is something that we shouldn't take for granted, but we should always recognise that we have a role to play in doing that again, to work together to try and create that. And I've just ended with the Sur le pavé la plage, because the other thing with technology is it's about always remembering that the reason that technology is there is because it really serves like a human need, and we have to remember and reflect on why the natural self that these technologies reflect. And I always think that's something that artists and creative producers can bring to the conversation around technology. And that's it. Thank you very much. So I hope that wasn't too rambling and philosophical.
Thank you so much. We love rambling and philosophical, and it wasn't at all rambling. It was super fascinating. I'm so glad we got this opportunity to hear the legacy that you've given to Brighton. And so many of us, so many artists and organisations have, they've got a lot of gratitude to you that you've given them a platform. In fact, you're one of the key people who keeps the streets of Brighton the awesome, creative, edgy, fun place that we love to live in. So thank you so much, Donna. And yes, you're going to get a lot of love in the chat as well. So, oh, it's so good. I'm like loving the links between all of the talks tonight as well. So thank you so much. Yes, so Donna will still be here, hopefully. We're coming to our final talk, and hopefully we'll have a bit of time for a bit of Q&A and a bit of networking of some description. We'll just all chat to each other afterwards as well. So, okay, I only met our final speaker for the first time a few weeks ago, and she made a huge impact on me. She is the driving force. I should leave a bit of a gap between each talk, isn't it? Because it's like processing. Okay, let me start again. I met our final speaker for the first time a few weeks ago. I seem to bump into her all the time. And yeah, she's making a huge impact on Brighton and on me personally. She's the driving force behind Brighton's first Black bookshop. She crowdfunded at least 10K now, I think it's up to, and has appeared on all the major news TV outlets talking about setting up her passion project, which is now a thriving business. And here to tell you all about it is, if we're ready, Caroline Bain. Are you there, Caroline?
I was waiting for you to unmute me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. No, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Technology. So, hey, I am Caroline Bain. Yes, I am the founder and owner and person behind Afori Books, which is Brighton and Sussex's only Black-owned, Black-centred bookshop. So by that I mean that we only have books by Black authors. I haven't got any slides, so you're just going to have to look at this for a few minutes. And also I'm sitting in a stock room and it's quite cold, so I'm wrapped up in my coat. So yeah, I recently opened the physical bookshop. We started Afori Books a year ago as an online bookshop, just because people were asking me about where could they get books and what do they do. George Floyd had been murdered and the world was pretty upside down as a world can get. And I thought that I'd just start this small project and it will be, you know, a little side thing to do. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it kept growing. And then, oh, I've lost my video. Hold on. There you go. Yeah, it kept growing. And then we were approached. I think that's because my laptop is moving. Let's try and make it not move. There. Okay. I'll sit much stiller and won't jog the table. Then we were approached last year by the Lighthouse charity in Brighton, who asked us if we would like to open a physical bookshop. I very sensibly said absolutely not, because why would you open a physical bookshop in the middle of a pandemic and when bookshops, you know, weren't the thing that people were opening. But they kind of were quite convincing, and customers were saying to us, oh, you know, why isn't there a physical shop? And so I thought, okay, let's try and do this. We thought initially that we'd get some funding to do that. We don't tick the right boxes, so that didn't happen. So we went for a crowdfund. We set up 5 weeks to do a crowdfund. We needed £10,000. We hit £10,000 on week 3.5 and closed the crowdfund at £12,460. I don't remember numbers, but that's not a number I'll ever forget, I don't think. Yeah, and so we have had a physical shop open in Brighton for a week and a day. So that's as hot off the press or fresh on the block as it gets, really. So I guess a bit about me, because my whole life has not been a bookshop, although it feels like that sometimes. I used to think and it's funny because I think Rifa kind of swayed me on this. I sat in a room with Rifa and some other quite influential women for a PhD research project. Just trying to think of, and it was really interesting listening to these women who were, you know, these amazing activists and feminists, and them talking about their journey, and it made me think, oh, where's my journey? Where did I kind of begin and start or whatever? And I've decided that because the socialists, sociologists, not socialists, the sociologists in the world tell me that I couldn't have been born like this, that there are two instances I kind of go back to now as my go back to places. Is that when I was 8, I didn't have a childhood like most people. I'd say probably very few people had a childhood like mine. It's quite deprived, quite yeah, just not nice. No, we've lost it again. Ugh. I should have gone for slides, shouldn't I? So I had a very unusual childhood, but one of the defining moments of my childhood is that when I was 8, a boy in my primary school decided that I thought too much of myself. And so he punched me in the face and broke my nose. And I remember just even then just thinking, right, well, that's not going to stop me thinking too much of myself. So I like to think that that's the day that I became a feminist. And when I was 10, or maybe a little bit younger, maybe around 9, I was taken on a march with the Socialist Workers' Party. And if you know the Socialist Workers' Party, it's not very far from communism. And so I like to think that's when I became an activist and an anti-racist. And so everything, I guess, in my life has been around those things. I've worked lots of jobs. And it's so funny, I think there are so many common threads between the speakers today. So I listen to them like, oh yeah, that's like me. Oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I definitely relate to that. So like the last speaker, I have worked like Donna. I've worked lots and lots of jobs, and done lots of things, but I can see this common thread of activism and just a real hatred of injustice. My mum says I always pick the cause and go and stand in the front of the battle line to fight for it. And so that has just been a common thread through my life, and all of my work has kind of been around that, or I've always been kind of looking for the thing that I wanted to fight for throughout, really, and which is a bit weird in lots of ways, because when we lived in London, we lived in a very multicultural city, and it was very easy and accepting, and then we moved to Brighton, and it's not such a great place to be for a Black person, but maybe that's part of it as well. Maybe that's just another battlefield that I went for. And so I was an event manager. I'm skipping many years of my life. I was an event manager, and last year, in January of last year, I was working for a very racist company and really just thinking, why am I here? Why am I here? I really need to get out of this. And then they helped, because there were 2 of their staff out of the 80 were Black. And in the space of a couple of days, they sacked both of us. They told him that they were sacking him because he worked too hard. And they took me in a room and told me they were sacking me because I was just way too qualified for my job. So I think, okay, I'll go back to being a freelance event manager. Why not? Great decision in late January 2020, just before events ended across the world. So I'm kind of sitting around and thinking, what would I like to do? And I remember this dream about a bookshop. So I put out some feelers, I do some stuff, and it comes together, you know, it sort of happens. And I'm saying that like it's really easy. It's not really easy. It's a massive slog and it's hard work. But yeah, it did. It came together. Doors opened at the right time in the right places. And yeah, and things just began to change. And I think that, you know, initially I opened the bookshop because people were asking me about books, because we used to import books from the States for the children when they were younger, so that they could see themselves in books. And then after George Floyd died, people were saying, oh, where did you get that? Or can you help me get that? And so initially I thought, oh, I'll just put together this little collection of 100 books, and it will just help out some friends, and that will be fine. Today we've got 642 books waiting to go onto the online bookshop, and I have no idea how many books are upstairs in the shop. A lot. And so, you know, that project just grew and grew. But one of the things that I started to see, and I guess because I am a campaigner and I am an activist and I do look for injustice, I guess, is that there wasn't just this injustice being done to readers who weren't able to access these books. But the more I sat within the publishing industry, the more I saw that there was this terrible injustice being done to authors, and that Black authors just did not get the platform. There was no shortage of Black authors, but if you looked at the publishing industry and looked at the major publishing houses, you would think there was. You'd think, oh, well, people aren't writing this stuff. And I got in a cab today, and the cab driver told me literally that, and said, oh, but surely the reason we don't see a lot of Black authors is because, you know, Black people don't write as many books. Okay, no, that's not the answer. And so what we saw was this ridiculous catch-22, where a publisher would take on a Black author, and then they would say, okay, let's put just a little bit of budget into promoting them because they won't sell. And then they didn't sell because there was no money spent in promoting them. And then the publisher goes, aha, see, I was right. And they're just stuck in this cycle over and over again. So, you know, I get really, really annoyed when people start talking about Richard Osman's book. Richard Osman, is that his name? Yeah, Richard Osman, the TV host, you know, etc., who's written these two books. His book last year was voted the best book of 2021. Now that blew my mind, because what did you read to think that this was the best book of 2021? Astonishing. But the reason that this book, you know, flew off the shelves and did so well was £500,000 is invested just in promoting the book. Well, you know, anyone who works in any kind of marketing and promotion knows that pretty much if you spend that kind of money, you'll get those kind of results. And so we started at 4 books thinking, yeah, these few books, and then got more into it and thought, actually, there's more to this. And so I sat down one day and wrote a mission statement. And the mission statement said that our mission was to support Black authors, create diverse bookshelves, and be a voice against injustice. And everything that we do has to sit in those 3 points. And supporting Black authors sits at the top of that, because it just doesn't happen. So we use our social media platforms, we use our voice wherever we can, just to talk about Black authors, just to shout and remind people that Black authors don't just write about social justice, they write romance, they write fantasy, they write boring, lovely academic stuff, and all the other things that you can think of. And just trying to just open that out to people, but also just helping people to have these diverse bookshelves. Because I mean, the last couple of weeks we've been talking a lot about bubble bursting, and I love like going into social things and making up different job titles for myself. So sometimes people say to me, oh, what do you do? And I go, oh, I'm changing the world. And they look at me like I'm mad. Or other times I'll say, oh, I'm a bubble burster. And they're like, what does that mean? And so when I say I'm a bubble burster, what I mean is that most people sit in a bubble of what they read. You know, so they read Richard Osman and they tell their friend about Richard Osman, and then that friend says, oh, my kids are reading David Walliams. And then lo and behold, you know, 3 years down the line, look at their bookshelf and it's all white men. And we just want to burst some of those bubbles. We want to just prick and say, actually, what you really like is thrillers. So here's a thriller written by Dorothy Coomson, Brighton's best-selling author. You know, here's a thriller written by Alicia Cole, you know, and pushing out these other titles and getting people to think outside the box and just, yeah, read differently. Because I do believe that books change the world, 100%. I do believe I'm changing the world, but I'm not on my own, but I know I am changing the world. And I believe that if we start changing the way people read and changing what they read, we start to break some of these negative narratives about Black people, about minorities, about, you know, people's worth on the earth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on, you know. So yeah, I am changing the world. I am Carolyn Bain, and I'm going to end there.
Oh my God, thank you so much, Carolyn. I have to say, every time there's one book over my shoulder that side that I just bought the other day, every time I walk past the lighthouse now, I have to pop in, I have to come out with at least one book. So that you're also helping the lighthouse become the community hub that we always wanted it to be, and the doors are always open, not 24/7 yet, but you know, we'll get there. And thank you so much to all of our speakers for your honesty, your time, and for all you're doing for Brighton and beyond. So thank you so much. I'm sorry we went over a little bit, and I'm sorry that it might have been difficult for you all to get on the call, but we're going to stick around for a bit longer. If you want to hang out and unmute yourself and give everyone some love. Thank you to Natalie Burns and Julie Sharp for tech and event support, and thank you all so much for coming. The whole video, including probably all the wittering I did at the beginning, will be on YouTube shortly. Have a fab rest of the evening. As I said, please stick around if you want to. If you want to know more about me and my coaching work as well, Rifa.co.uk is me. But yeah, we're still here for a little bit longer, but I will stop recording. But thank you so much again, Carolyn and Meg and Kirsty and Donna. You're all fantastic women. Thank you. This is such a moving, inspiring. I always think that the last event was the best one, but this one was definitely the best one. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I'm going to stick around.